Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, County Executive wants to shut down indoor dining and limit capacity at retail stores and at religious buildings 10 days before Christmas. Maryland Superintendent of Schools says that the public schools can open safely. What does that mean for Montgomery County? And is the County Council too progressive for Montgomery County? Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the Dean of Democratic Politics, Sam Statland. Secretary of the Maryland Republican Central Committee, Mark Uncapher. President of the Chevy Chase Women's Republican Club, Laurie Halverson. And political strategist, Susan Heltemes. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. As the number of COVID infections continue to rise, local officials are floundering about for a way to limit the spread. On Wednesday evening, County Executive Mark Elrich announced that he is seeking the approval of the County Council for additional restrictions to further restrict indoor dining and severely limit the capacity requirements at retail operations and religious gatherings. These restrictions are set to go into effect 10 days before Christmas and in the middle of the Jewish Hanukkah celebration. Mark, it is clear that the government officials don't have a clue how to contain the spread of the virus. What is going to work?
Well, let's be clear. What Montgomery County is proposing is contrary to what CDC or the quote science is recommending. What CDC is recommending is 6 feet separation. 6 feet separation requires 36 square feet. Arguably 50 square feet if you extended an extra foot. What Montgomery County is envisioning is a far more rigorous standards. For retail, it's up to 200 square feet, and the standard for religious institutions, which really is something completely contrary to what the Supreme Court has said, limits them even further, where it is entirely possible to do the appropriate social distancing. Montgomery County's government completely ignores that.
Laurie, shutting down the restaurants will have a devastating impact on the business. I mean, 100,000 restaurants across the country have already gone out of business. But it's more importantly, locally, it will throw thousands of waiters, cooks, and kitchen help out of work at Christmas time. There doesn't seem to be a problem eating indoors.
Yeah, what a Christmas present to all of the people who work in our restaurants. It's just, Travis Scales, Dr. Travis Scales is a medical doctor. He's not a scientist. Why are our elected officials listening only to him? He keeps citing Dr. Fauci, but he construes what Dr. Fauci is saying. It's just not using science to determine this. Why are we going from 50%, which is what our state is doing, capacity in restaurants? We've already gone to 25%. Which is half of what the rest of the state is doing. And now now the county executive is proposing that we have no indoor dining in our restaurants. How is this? This is taking something that's not working because our cases are still increasing. Where is the data? Where's the data that shows this? The CDC doesn't have information about saying we should be closing all restaurants indoors. The University of Maryland medical system on their website says it is safe to eat indoors if you follow precautions. So this should not be happening in our county. It's hurting our businesses, and it's just crazy. I don't understand it.
Sam, the restaurants I've been to in the past several months seem sparsely attended. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of people actually going to restaurants in the areas that I've been to. But now Council Member Hans Reimer is suggesting that if we may need further restrictions, including a stay-at-home order. Now, these tactics were tried in the past. They were tried last spring. The pandemic is still with us. Why is it going to work this time?
Well, we have to remember that each jurisdiction is unique and has its own set of issues. For example, Montgomery County has more of a senior population than most jurisdictions do. Therefore, we're more vulnerable. And we have tried shutting down before. And if you look at California, 2/3 of the state is under lockdown, as are other jurisdictions. We're not proposing a lockdown. What we're proposing to do is a stay-at-home order to keep people at home and safe and reducing the curve. In this past week, we've had more infections in this county than we've ever had in the past, and we really, really have to get a handle on this. We're talking about the safety, the health, and the lives of citizens in this county.
Sam, we may have more infections than we've had in the past, but the hospitalization rate for COVID patients still is half of what it was in May of this year. I think that the public is being misled by misleading statistics because the number of infections doesn't tell us the story about the dangers of the disease.
But what it does show you is as the infections rate rises, then your hospitalizations increase. And what Hans is proposing is to break that curve, lower the curve, so that we don't get to capacity in our hospitals. And that's very, very important. Look, this is a very, very dangerous time. All of the people that I'm talking to are really very, very scared of this, Casey. It is serious, and we have to.
What frustrates me, Sam, and I think frustrates others, is that we are not giving any credence to the intelligence of the American people to make their own decisions. Do you think that there is not a single person in America that doesn't know about the need to social distance and to wear a mask and to use good sanitary measures in their lives? This is preposterous.
Casey, I would just like to interject here. There are 12 Republican governors who do not mandate masks because they say it's questionable whether they're useful. So this is a country, and people go across borders. We did flatten the curve in Montgomery County, but then people come from elsewhere. And the governor is announcing new restrictions at 3 o'clock today, Wednesday, and County Executive also broke in Prince George's announced this morning. They're doing the same thing Montgomery County has, and when they had their big summit yesterday of the large jurisdictions, I believe they're all going to be on the same path. It is a
Susan, but let's address the fact you're not
everyone safe.
Sam, I want to hear from Mark.
I was going to say, what you're not addressing is that you're not following the recommendations of the CDC. Now, I get the fact that there's all this angst about it, but there are specific public health recommendations about the required distancing, and by quadrupling what that standard is, you're not making people healthy.
Well, Mark, their new research just came out yesterday from South Korea, and they have discovered that 5 minutes with the person 6 feet away can give you the virus. And they're saying it's probably more like 9 feet or more now. So other countries that are doing more tracing are finding that you have to go even farther. So I commend the executive. And remember, we can all do carry out and we can eat outside, so we can help save our restaurants. And there are some who say that to go back to school, we're going to have to close everything else down.
We're not really. It's a facade. We say we're going to save our restaurants, but the fact is they're closing. They can't stay in business. I talked to the owner of Potomac Pizza the other day. He has 8 outlets. If this is going further, all 8 of them are going to go out of business.
And
this isn't a joke.
It would
they
really
can't survive on carry out alone.
It would be really great if Congress passed the Relief Act so that we could get funds to these businesses so they can stay awake and alive until the COVID crisis eases.
Your answer is always somebody else's money to pay for it. Why don't we trust the American people to do what they're capable of doing, which is using their good common sense about whether or not they want to go to a restaurant, and not mandate some hypothetical standard that can't be verified.
They are verifying it, but you keep saying I don't want to hear statistics.
And they are driving people to sickness. So by closing these restaurants down, it keeps people safe. Nobody wants to close these restaurants down. I certainly
don't know that. We don't know that for sure that's what it does.
I'm not sure that's true, though.
Well, we got a wrap-up question for Susan before we go on to our next topic about the school system, which is, if there are further restrictions like Councilmember Reamer is proposing, are people going to obey it? Are they going to?
I would hope so. In Sweden, they kept the schools open because they had closed down everything else. And as Sweden said, we tend to follow rules. If we don't follow rules, it's going to get worse. All you have to do is look at a map of the United States. It's bright red. Yes, we're starting to get vaccines next week, but we're getting far less than what was originally quoted by the administration. So we've got a ways to go.
And
People
people
want their own liberty. They want to be able to make their own decisions and not
and
have
this will help them
decision
say,
superimposed on them by government.
Now that's the rule of government, to protect the citizens.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, we've got to talk about our schools, which is in hot debate. There was a online poll of MCPS students, parents this week, as to whether or not the school system should be opened up. And there is more and more proof that comes out that school-age children are not physically impacted by the COVID and being in school, but are being negatively impacted by not being in school, particularly low-income and special needs students. Maryland School Superintendent Karen Solomon said that Maryland public schools are safe to open with certain guardrails. Yet here in Montgomery County, there is a reluctance by both parents and teachers to in-person learning. Susan, private schools have been open with little disruption since September. Why can't Montgomery County Public Schools open up for more in-person learning?
We don't exactly know about the disruptions because it's private information. And I know of at least one of the biggest private schools in the county has closed down and gone to virtual because they consider it too dangerous to be there in person. And yes, maybe children go to sick, but they transfer it to other people. And you have to remember they're bus drivers, sanitary workers, there are teachers, and they're older. So it is dangerous. Is it ideal? Heavens, no. And we have...
Mark, behind the scenes, the executive is working with all of the public unions, PCGO, SEIU, MCEA, to rapidly, as fast as possible, get the air handling in the schools. That's the biggest problem we're having with the schools and opening them, is the air exchange systems. They're all working as hard as they can, because we do need our schools open.
And that's the same issue with restaurants, the air exchange systems. And that is very costly, and there has been no help from anywhere to do that.
So Susan, if a restaurant had an air exchange system, would you allow them to be open?
I think if they can prove that they've done it, there should be some sort of certification they could put on their door. I think that's possible. And I just read yesterday of someone who has one of those air things and went around and checked restaurants and was appalled at what he found. So if they do that, yes, I think they should get approved.
That's not part of the policy though, is it?
It hasn't been suggested. Maybe you should make that suggestion.
Yeah, good chance getting that passed. So Laurie, only got a couple of minutes on this. We are learning that minority students are suffering the most from a lack of in-person learning. Why is this being tolerated by our school superintendent? And more importantly, why aren't parents more up in arms about this?
We looked at the last Board of Ed meeting, they released some very troubling data. They said that Black children in poverty have increased their failing rates by 15.5%, and that the Hispanic students of poverty increased by 24.2%. Jack Smith he's got a very tough job. He has to work with teachers union and the parents and all the elected officials. So he needs people to help him make a decision. It takes a very strong leader to be able to go against what all of our far left county councilmen are saying. However, our Board of Ed is slowly changing. It's been Rebecca Smondrowski all along. She's always been saying open the schools. Finally, we're hearing a few more of the Board of Ed members are now saying they'd like to see schools open and are waiting till we have more data, just make the final decision on that. But I'd say fear is driving it. We have parents who are afraid. They are afraid because of the stuff you get in the media. They're all afraid to put their kids back in school. So that's why many of them have chosen on the survey to say they want their kids to stay at home. We've got our far left officials.
What I'm concerned about, we're going to have a whole year go by where the majority of the students will not have learned enough really to matriculate going forward. Are we going to have to have all of those students, in effect, repeat the year?
There is that effort
No, that will never happen.
forward, Casey, already.
Why not? Why won't
Well,
that happen?
it is the thought that's being put forth, Laurie, that this year should not count. And I believe
Well,
they're
but
counting
what-
in other
Yeah, but
grades, too.
shouldn't those
Change
students,
grading. I mean,
Yeah.
the grading has already changed slightly, but I think they're going to maybe relax the grades a little bit. But they've never had the philosophy of holding kids back. That has always been something.
It's not holding it back. It's that the year across the board doesn't count.
But what
Doesn't matter
about
whether
those
you're
students? What about those
you're in
students that have been able to continue to learn? So basically what we ought to do is figure out who's behind and who's been able to stay up and make the appropriate adjustments, as opposed to simply applying a single, again, one size fits all approach to everybody, which seems to be your recommendation.
But equity is the problem there, because you're going to have the minority students are going to be held, they're going to have to redo a lot of things, while other kids who've had help from parents and from other places will not have to, they need to keep learning, but they're going to be the ones held back because of this generalization that everyone's making.
Well, we got to wrap this up very
fair.
quickly. I'm sorry, we got to wrap this up very quickly because when we come back from our break, I want to talk about the county council and some of the bills that they have just proposed. So stay tuned for more of 21 this week when we come back from the short break. And welcome back. This week, the Montgomery County Council launched a series of legislations promoting racial equity and social justice in housing, which some consider extreme. Sam, one bill called the Protection Against Rent Gouging Near Transit effectively establishes a rent control on all rental units within a mile of metro stations. Is that a good idea when we're hurting for housing?
Casey, it's within a half mile. And what this legislation does is it feathers into other legislation. Right now, you can build a high rise in Bethesda, for example, without putting in any PDUs. However, the builder has to provide another piece of property where that can be done. And there are small pieces of property in the Twin Brook area and, more importantly, the White Flint area. For example, in White Flint, the executive just signed a letter of understanding with WMATA to redevelop White Flint into a biotech, IT, and educational campus. And around that area are small pieces of land where these units can be built that were swapped from others. So what this does is, it gives the builder, before a building, he knows how much he can collect in rents. He knows how much his costs are going to be. They know how much the tenants can be charged, and you can provide these units. So all of this fits together, and I think it's a great idea.
I think it's wonderful that the county council has such a wonderful crystal ball that they can predict the economy for the next 100 years. I mean, this the idea that landlords aren't able to raise their own rents based on market conditions is extreme, Sam.
But we do have the policy in the county of
Susan, excuse me. The fact is that we've had kind of a rent control where landlords can never increase the cost of rents above inflation. That really does nothing to change that. That's been here. We've had it for years. This is not going to hurt that. What this is going to do is allow for the development of a piece of property near White Flint with housing for the people that work in those situations, affordable housing, where the builder knows what his costs are, that the tenant knows what the rent is, and it's profitable for everyone. And it reduces,
So you say. So I got to go to Susan. I want to follow. We have only a minute and a half left. Susan, the council's also introduced the Housing Justice Act, which is going to prevent landlords from screening and potential tenants about some of their criminal record. Doesn't this seem like a rather extreme idea?
It's some of their criminal records, and just like Block the Box, it's giving people with a record of some kind the ability to go back into society. And when you look at the opportunities, if you can't get housing, you're not going to get anywhere. So it is a first step. I think that if people have concerns, there's going to be hearing on it this next week. And, you know, talk about the issues. I think there could be some modifications, but I think if you got caught for weed 5 years ago, you should have the ability to rent an apartment. And I think that we have to be more.
Well, I mean, I
More
think the
importantly,
issue is whether or not there are more serious crimes than simple possession that are going to be excluded from, you know, from being inquired about and you being used as a criteria.
There is a list, I believe, that they can ask about.
Well, we're out of time. I'm sorry. We could talk about a couple of other initiatives that the county council is proposing. We'll have to save those till next week. And when we come back, we're going to have parting shots. Stay tuned. And welcome back. Now with parting shots, Susan Heltemes.
Since this is my last show of the season, I want to wish everybody a happy Hanukkah, a Merry Christmas, and I wish everyone inner peace, joy, happiness, and miracles in the coming year. And on Monday, the electors vote, we will have a president. Everybody get over it. It is going to be President Biden. And Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin is crazy. He's having a hearing next week to see if they can overthrow the race. Get over it, guys. It's done. Happy 2021.
Thank you, Susan. Laurie Halverson, your parting shot.
Yes, nobody is talking about a therapeutic drug that has a lot of promise. It's called RLF 100 or Aviptadil, and it is, the company is called NeuroRx, and it is a therapeutic drug used for people who go into respiratory failure, and it's already proven to help a lot of people, and people who are on their deathbed are getting better and coming out of the hospital, and it met the FDA targets for 165 patients. It's something to watch, and if you have anyone in the hospital, you should know about that drug to hopefully get help with it.
Thank you, Laurie. Sam Statland, your parting shot.
Yes, folks, deepest condolences to the Sarbanes family. We really lost a remarkable person. I really wish he was in Congress right now. He would be a shining voice to get Congress to pass this legislation. And he's just a heck of a guy. His family was built upon a history of public service, has followed through to the family. So my condolences go out to the Sarbanes family. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Sam. Wonderful sentiment. And Mark Uncapher, your parting shot.
Casey is one of the many adjustments that people have had to make this year for COVID. The Montgomery County Republicans couldn't hold our annual Christmas party, which is also a collection for Toys for Tots. So we made the adjustment and this year did a drive-through Toys for Tot. We had 3 stations. You dropped off your toy, you got a picture, and then you moved on to the next station and you got either a cookie or some hot chocolate, whatever. And the good news is we collected about as much in toys as we do in a normal year. So thank you all for those who participated.
Thank you for that good work, Mark. I want to thank the panel and especially Susan and Laurie who are on for the last time this calendar year. I hope all is well for you in the upcoming year. And I want to thank Sam and Mark who are stalwarts in this Zoom conferencing to appear almost every week. And I want to thank the audience for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.